The DOGE task force will come to order. Welcome everybody to our next task force meeting. Excuse my co-chair, Senator Lakey. He is out of town and unable to join us today. And welcome everybody. Appreciate your interest in this and our ongoing work. As it's been said before, this is going to be a multi-year process. There's a lot to look at and a lot to get through, but we're hoping in these next couple of meetings we can put forward some recommendations and have some things to carry forward into the legislative session. With that, committee, we have some minutes for approval, and since we are joint committee, I have to remember we operate with Senate rules, which requires a second. So, Senator Samaroth.
Thank you, Chairman Ehlers. And having read through the minutes, and major appreciation to the Secretary for such meticulous and comprehensive minutes, I move that we approve the minutes from September 29th, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second on that? Second. Senator Berkey seconds. Any discussion on the minutes? Any changes or corrections that need to be had? Seeing none, those in favor of approving the minutes from September 29th signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by nay? Motion carries and the minutes are approved. And Senator, appreciate you bringing that up. We are grateful to our staff. You'll see they put a lot of work into the presentations today and in providing information and additional insight and knowledge for what we're looking at. So thank you to our LSO staff and the work that they're doing. First up, we have Alex Penny from our LSO Impact Review team. He's going to discuss the Idaho Code Cleanup Act and the new sections. I think we're over 70 sections today or close to that. 79 that he's going to go through. Committee, you have before you sort of a summary page, and then I believe earlier this week, if you want the full text and analysis was sent out, which Mr. Penny will go over. So, Mr. Penny, if you could introduce yourself for the record and then go ahead and make your presentation once you get your document pulled up.
Cool. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the DOGE Task Force. My name is Alex Penny. I'm a research analyst with the Impact Review Team and the Legislative Services Office. And today I'll give a brief update on the Idaho Code Cleanup Act and the submissions we've received and those we've reviewed and we think are ready to advance to the next stage and go to bill drafting. So just a real brief history again. The act is in Title 67, Chapter 37 of Idaho Code, and it was the result of the passage of House Bill 14. It requires agencies to submit obsolete, outdated, and or unnecessary provisions of code. At the last task force meeting, Deputy Director of LSO, Mr. Paul Headley, talked a bit about our review process and the provisions that we are focusing on. Again, we're prioritizing the more straightforward, low-hanging fruit repeals, and we're doing our due diligence with the other submissions as well. We do have a few open threads with the agencies on different provisions that we're waiting to hear a little bit more about. At the last meeting, 20 provisions were advanced to bill drafting through a motion, and I think that brings us to today. So with the same process, we have 79 provisions of code before the task force today, and we've been sending these out weekly. The handout and the screen shows the breakdown. So as you can see, it's a breakdown by agency. So there's 17 from the Department of Finance, 20 from the Department of Water Resources, 1 from the State Treasurer, 1 from LSO, 23 from the Department of Lands, 5 from the Department of Parks and Recreation, 2 from the Division of Human Resources, 1 with the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, 1 with the Hispanic Commission, and finally 8 from the Library Commission. So one thing I do want to note is that the Columbia Compact is included in the 79 provisions provided, and that was submitted by the Department of Water Resources. just that intersects a bit with the agency consolidation and elimination presentation that my colleague, Mr. Tatro, will give later. So another reminder, after the bill drafting, the approved sections will go to the germane committees for consideration. As far as the future goes, we'll continue to get these out weekly. The next task force meeting will likely have the last large packet of provisions that might go before the germane committees this session, and that's largely out of respect for our bill drafters and their capacity. We will, however, continue to work through the several hundred provisions and maybe provide a very large packet next interim as well. But with that, I think I'll stand to answer any questions on the provisions provided and maybe hand it over or defer to any of my colleagues or any of the agency representatives if they are present. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Penny. I do want to note that we, I believe, invited the agency heads, either director or their designee, for those that were impacted. I think some of them are in the audience today. If we do have specific questions on some of these code cleanup sections. So, committee members, any questions for Mr. Penny or maybe specific ones that we might direct to any of these agencies involved? I'll start with one. I'll have to find it again. It was in the credit union one. It's 26-2177. It's mostly, I don't know what page it is, around page 20 in that large packet. I think it is page 20 in your large packet. Just curious of the word choice of family for a credit union. It says official family. Maybe there's somebody in the financial industry that, it's the title of it, 26-2177.
The title of the provisioning code.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot speak to that. I'm not sure if an agency representative might be able to provide an answer.
I'm not seeing anyone in the audience willing to jump up and answer that question, so perhaps they're not represented. So that's fine. I don't think that's going to change my decision here on this, but I just thought it was an interesting word choice. Any other questions for Mr. Penny or for the agencies? I guess one other one, I'm just looking at my notes. Some of the analysis said that the Department of Finance may have wished to comment on this elimination of this Idaho Corporate Credit Union as a cooperative nonprofit entity. Did we receive any comments from the Department of Finance, or are they here today to make any comments to this end? Okay. Doesn't look like it. All right. Committee members, I don't see any further discussion. So on your one-page summary handout at the bottom, there is a motion, a prepared motion number 1, that the chair would entertain so we could take action on essentially moving this code cleanup recommendation forward. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to ask a quick question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering if someone from Water Resources is here that could address the one on the Columbia River Treaty Compact. I don't know if anyone's here.
Representative, I'm not sure. Mr. Penny?
It's Title 42, Chapter 17.
I'm not seeing anyone in the audience, so Representative, if you want to address your question and see if Mr. Penny can answer it, or we can note it down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Penny. Just a little bit more detail on that, if you could.
Yeah.
Mr. Penny, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Scott. So I think with Chapter 42, or Title 42, Chapter 17, there were 2 of them. The one was a annual report, and the other was a specific fund. I'll address, I think, the fund first. We spoke with our budget staff, and it looks like that fund hasn't been active for quite a few years, and there are other funds that exist that are satisfying the purposes of that fund. So the fund seems to be obsolete in that regard. And then with the departmental report, I think that was something that we believe that part of it is satisfied by the performance reports and the strategic plans, and maybe the parts that are not. We still think that the governor can ask for that information, and removing this from code would not really impact anything.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any further questions. Representative Tanner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a motion.
Motion's in order.
I move that the DOGE Task Force, as it preparation to the Idaho Code Cleanup Act, recommend the list 79 sections of subsections of Idaho Code and listed in Attachment 1 as submitted by the associated state agencies be delivered to the Research and Legislation Division in the Legislative Service Office to begin the bill drafting process for germane committee consideration.
Thank you. It's probably the longest motion I've ever heard in history. Do we have a second on that motion? Senator Blaylock. You're right, I'm not in JFAC. They have longer motions. Okay, second. Committee, any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, those in favor to move that the task force recommends these 79 sections, I'm not going to repeat it all, as listed and send it to begin the bill drafting process. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. By nay. And the motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Penny. I think you're still up before us. So this is going to be about the DOGE portal comments and an update. So again, if you could introduce yourself for the record and then give us an update on what we're seeing coming through the portal.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. And again, for the record, my name is Alex Penny. I'm a research analyst with the Impact Review Team and the Legislative Services Office. And I also have a brief update today on the DOGE Government Efficiency Portal and the submissions. So the public comment portal. Okay, so just a brief reminder, it was created by the DOGE Task Force to allow the public to report instances of government duplication, waste, or inefficiencies. And the purpose is really to make government processes more efficient and to improve services. And the general breakdown of the information that we receive, first we have the name and contact information. The citizen member of the public selects a relevant policy area, and then they give the meat and potatoes, the comment, the things that they want to focus on, and they provide any proposed solutions to address their comment. So to date, we've received 648 submissions to the portal from the public. And as you can see on the screen, and the largest category is general government at 203, health is at 131, education 98, and so on and so forth. At ELSO, we've been reviewing all of these public comments. Sometimes the selected relevant policy area doesn't necessarily match up with what the comment or the solution, or we think it might be a little better explained. So as we've been going through all of those 648 submissions, we've tried to categorize them a little further. So these are the categories we came up with. So again, health and Medicaid is still up near the top at 135, education at 85. A couple I want to point out, the specific agency and or personnel, like it says, a specific agency or a specific division or specific director. These comments are really addressed kind of at the nitty gritty. And then you have state operations, which are kind of concepts or ideas that might affect all of the agencies. So something like reforming or changing the purchasing process, or talking about vendors or work from home or things like that. So those are just a couple of the categories that stick out, and the rest of them are on the screen now. We are happy to dig into any of those specific categories or the categories that came about with the original submission, or we can look into any specific requests from the task force. But I think that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. Committee members, any questions or comments on the DOGE portal? Senator Blaylock.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Penny. I want to, as time has gone on, the submissions have gotten a lot better. I think maybe there was some initial frustration at the beginning, and we heard a lot of shut the task force down, and that's fine. But I feel like the last couple reports that have been sent over, I've enjoyed reading through some of those. They're thoughtful and give me things to think about and go research. I'm curious if outside of this task force, if any of this information is shared, and I know I've asked in previous committees about the whistleblowers, because we've had a couple of those in state agencies where they think there's some misuse of funds. I'm just curious if, and I know nothing was done then, but I'm curious if we could utilize some of this, even if, because obviously you guys are reading these and categorizing them, if it would be helpful for even agency heads, if there was some recommendations of programs or whatever, if they were to receive those, and even outside of the task force, just see like, oh, I didn't realize that this was happening. I don't know if that's appropriate, but I'm just curious if we can, the best way to put all of these great submissions to work.
Yeah.
Mr. Penny?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator, that information, yeah, correct. Right now, it's just going to the task force, but I think the task force can decide and work together and see kind of the next steps forward on providing this information to the agencies or to whoever it may be. But yeah.
Go ahead,
Chairman,
Senator.
and this may be even a question for the chairman as well, but would it be appropriate if I see a submission that I'm like, I want to ask the agency head, would it be appropriate for me to send that along with a question or two, or should I run that through the committee, or what would your recommendation be?
I think it'd probably be appropriate. You might want to maybe just double check with the co-chairs and see, but I think something we could do, I'm just thinking for the next task force meeting, is maybe have gone through some of these and we put forward the ones we want to forward on to the agencies or ask the agencies about. We could even take some time here to have them respond to some of these ideas. So maybe we just spend some time between now and the next meeting classifying those, forwarding some of them on, and then we can spend time to address potential solutions.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator. That was really good. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any further. We appreciate the public's interest in this. Again, if you want to make a comment in the public portal, it's legislature.idaho.gov/DOGE. There's the option to submit anonymously as well. So we will keep going through those and keeping our eye on them. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Penny.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we're going to switch topics here and go back into full-time employees. And today we're going to address some things around bonuses and vacancies and management level FTPs. We have with us Frances Lippitt from LSO, a senior budget and policy analyst. Ms. Lippitt, if you could introduce yourself for the record, and then you can make your presentation. And then just for the committee's benefit, you do have a packet before you regarding all of this, which I think Ms. Lippitt will go through with us today. But if you just want to see a hard copy of it, there should be one before you. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. For the record, my name is Frances Lippitt. I am a senior budget and policy analyst with Legislative Services Office. And one of my assignments is the Change in Employee Compensation Committee. And so that is part of how I have the luck to get to speak to you today about bonuses, extended vacancies, and management ratios at state agencies. And so specifically, we're trying to address some of the questions that arose during the task force's last meeting. I'm going to be walking through the compensation tools at state agencies' disposal and then reviewing bonuses and temporary merit increases before we get into positions that have been vacant longer than 6 months and those management ratios. So the first item that you should have received in your packet is a table of lump sum compensation tools. So these are effectively the types of bonuses that state agencies can provide to employees. One important thing to note is that any type of pay change that a state agency would like to implement must be routed through both the Division of Human Resources and the Division of Financial Management so that the justification and fiscal impact can be evaluated before a pay change is approved. And then in addition, agencies are also required to report to both the executive and legislative branch on bonuses that were paid out by October 1st of each year. So on that first page, looking at bonuses, a performance bonus would reward exemplary service and can go up to $2,000. A recruitment bonus can only be used to recruit a new hire to state employment, and that would be up to $5,000. And agencies have the option whether they would provide that payment at the time of hire or after 6 months, if it is a position that struggles with retention. Retention bonuses can be used to retain employees, although agencies are limited to only one of those annually, and those are also provided up to $5,000. And then one more unusual type of bonus is the employee suggestion bonus, which rewards state employee suggestions that have resulted in taxpayer savings. And those can be awarded up to the lesser of either $2,000 or 1/4 of the savings that were provided. The recruitment and retention bonuses both require memorandums of understanding with employees, and part of that is so that if an employee leaves within 6 months, the employee could be required to pay back the bonus. But basically, the agency is retaining a level of control in the event that the bonus doesn't fulfill its intended purpose. So that is the most common types of bonuses or lump sum pay tools. State agencies also have several base pay compensation tools. So this would be the ongoing pay increases.
Ms. Lippitt, can I pause you here?
Please.
If you're moving on to the next topic, if we
Certainly.
could maybe just address bonuses. First, committee members, are there any questions while we're on bonuses? I think there's some documents provided here with a bonus report as well.
Yes, Mr. Co-Chair. So the bonus report is the item that is going to be right after we discuss base pay compensation tools. So we're talking about policy right up top, and then we'll get into the two reports that go into. All
right, go ahead. Yeah, let's discuss policy, and then we can get into the reports. Thank you.
Great. All right. So base pay tools can help to retain employees, reward performance, and provide pay changes for increased responsibilities. There are 4 basic types of base pay increases. Merit pay increases are, I think, what most people are familiar with. This is what we often think of when we think of change in employee compensation. These are pay changes that are rewarding performance based on performance evaluations. Equity pay changes are adjustments to provide similar pay for similar work. That could be based on an internal baseline or an external baseline. Conditional merit increases can be provided for increased duties for as long as an employee retains that responsibility. So that type of increase could effectively be indefinite for as long as that additional responsibility is carried. And then finally, temporary merit increases, which can be provided for short-term assignments, typically less than 6 months. This would normally look like a particular project or filling in behind a vacancy or training new staff. So, having run through our compensation tools, we next have the statewide bonus report by agency for fiscal year 2025. And so if we're looking at the Department of Health and Welfare, you can see that last fiscal year, 25 employees received a bonus. The average amount of that bonus was $3,840, and the department as a whole spent $96,000 on bonuses. Jumping down to the end of the report, 2,315 employees received bonuses statewide at an average cost to the state of $1,912 and an overall cost of $4.4 million. So, are there any?
Representative Tanner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Libet. I was going to see if you could actually do maybe a little research on the Department of Lands. I know that I've done a little bit of research as well. They have the fire fund. That's where the bonuses are getting paid out of. But the few people that I had seen getting some of those fire bonuses don't seem like they are actually fire related or firefighter aspects. So maybe if you could provide a list of all the bonuses, who they were giving to, kind of their classification, job classification, so we can kind of look through and make sure that we're not just having a fund that we're giving money out of.
Ms. Libet.
Certainly, Co-Chair Ehlers and Representative Tanner. That's something we can look into. I will say that I'm not sure if the data that I have access to identifies the bonuses that are specific to fire. I think we can find a way to report that, but I'll just say that the data that I do have, I think all of those bonuses would fall under the performance bonus category, so they would be lumped in with every other type of performance bonus.
Okay. Yeah, if you could do some research in that and provide that back if possible. Follow up?
Certainly.
I got a whole bunch of follow-ups, but
okay, go ahead.
I was trying to spread them out a little bit. So one of the things you had mentioned in the very beginning was on the bonuses, you were talking about collecting it back. If they don't actually pay it, then we can actually go back and collect it back. So if we hired somebody, say we gave them a performance bonus or a bonus right off the bat when they first were hired, because you had stated we do that, and we lose a lot of retention with a lot of those employees. We go through, we do this in health and welfare a lot. They go through the training, they never make it to the training, and then they're gone. If we were to do that, do we have somebody or do we have some way of going back, or does this go back on a collection aspect? I'm just curious, how do we actually get that money back, or we just withhold their paychecks?
Ms. Lippett.
Co-Chair Ehlers and Representative Tanner. So that would be specific to the terms of the individual MOU. I haven't seen one of those MOUs. I imagine they're fairly standard by agency. But as to what I think that might look like, I think a reduction in the size of the paycheck is that's likely how that would be processed.
Representative Tanner, I can break it up if you want to.
No. Oh, yeah.
Keep going.
I'll speak to that one, and then you can break it up.
All right.
So I actually am just more curious because I've actually done this as an employer as well. I had an employee that had done a really good job at giving bonus, but we had an agreement that they would stay 6 months minimal, and I gave them the bonus. They left after about 2.5 months. I actually went out and tried collecting that back because there wasn't enough in their last paycheck to actually even withhold. Then I looked at state law and I couldn't withhold the paycheck. So I still had to release the paycheck based on current law, and then I couldn't there was nothing for me to actually go back and actually get that back, even though I had an agreement. I'd have to go sue them. or I turn them into a collection agency and they'd have to go after them. So I'm just more curious how if the state is a better way of doing it, or if we are exempt from law and we just get to do what we want. I'm just more curious, how do we get around that?
Ms. Lippitt.
Co-chair and Representative Tanner, my educated guess would be that we are not exempt from law. However, I'm not exactly sure of the mechanics of what that recouping a bonus that didn't meet its job would look like, and that's something I can look into and follow up with you about.
Yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great. Maybe work with HR or someone and provide some of those insights or examples of what that would look like. So some of my questions are around on this report for the statewide bonuses. There's 2,315 employees that received a bonus. A rule of thumb, I think I've heard there's about 25,000 state employees, so we're just under 10% received a bonus. But I think it's interesting how it varies by departments. I'm wondering if you could get, so we have the number of employees here that received a bonus. I wonder if you could show like total employees and like what percent of that was, to just kind of see if there's some outliers in terms of, maybe, so overall it's about 10% of state employees, but, maybe one department only gives 1% of bonuses, and maybe there's another department that gives, 70% of their employees bonuses. I think that'd be interesting to look at and understand those reasons why. So,
Co-chair, understood. I think that that question makes a lot of sense, because I do think that it would vary quite a bit depending on the mission of the agency and just the nature of those positions and how difficult to retain they are.
Sure, I think that could help inform us to understand, maybe there's some reasonable answers why one's an outlier and one's not, but it might help us be able to drill down a little bit more. The other question I have is, you have dollar amounts listed here by agency. It's about $4.4 million in total. Do you know if that's all general fund money or if there are other fund sources for this?
Co-chair, that would be all fund sources. So I would imagine that a portion of that is general fund, but I wouldn't want to speak to what proportion that would be.
Okay. If you could maybe have a breakdown in that, I think that would be helpful, and just report back with that so we could see. Okay. Thank you. All right, Representative Tanner.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Lippitt. You had stated in the very beginning, you had actually mentioned the short-term merit aspect, but we really didn't get into it. Mostly I'm looking into this because I actually had a director nonchalantly tell me, because it was about bonuses, and they said, well, one of the ways we can get around it was actually doing short-term merit around the statutory authority around bonuses. So I'm just curious if there's a way for us to see these short-term merit increases versus bonuses, and if there are any. I couldn't find any regulations actually on that, and if there aren't, how can this body, or how can we make recommendations maybe to actually look at reeling that in, making sure that there's not a loophole there?
Ms. Lippitt?
Certainly. So, Co-Chair Ehlers and Representative Tanner, if you look back at the base pay compensation sheet, the temporary merit increase, all of the base pay increase categories are outlined in section 67-5309B. To your question about looking at those increases, after this bonus report, we have a report on the temporary merit increases for this fiscal year to date. And so that can kind of give you a sense of the scale and frequency for those.
Okay. While I was looking at that, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lippitt, I'm curious, in your research, can you tell me what the lottery sales bonus is for? What information did you find on that?
Ms. Lippitt?
Thank you, Co-Chair and Representative Scott. It's been a minute since I looked at that one, but I believe that it is meeting a particular sales target.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One additional question I had. So in the policy section you outlined, there is the potential for an employee suggestion bonus. But when I look at the actual numbers and the breakdown, it does not look like anybody's actually received that bonus. A little disappointed. I was hopeful somebody would chime in with good suggestions and get rewarded. But do you know when the last time that bonus was actually utilized?
Co-Chair, I think that's a fantastic question. I have no idea, but I can find out.
Okay. Yeah, if you could just find out. I'd be curious on that, if it's working as intended. Okay. Committee members, any further questions while we're discussing bonuses and temporary pay increases? Okay, I'm not seeing any right now, so maybe you can keep going with your presentation and we'll circle back if we need to on any others. Questions?
All right. So the next item is essentially the same statewide bonus report, but it breaks out the type of bonus. And from this, basically what you're seeing when you get to the grand total line is that the most common type of bonus for fiscal 25 and probably in general is a retention bonus. So there were 915 retention bonuses that were awarded last year, and then seconded by the performance bonus, 675 were provided last year. No questions? All right. So the next item in your packet is the report that shows temporary merit increases for the fiscal year to date. So this is the base pay increases that are provided for additional time-limited work that is being taken on by an employee. It's a much less common pay change, and it's typically less than 6 months. So if you're looking at the top of this report for the Office of the Attorney General, one employee took on a project or additional duties of some kind for a little over a month, since each pay period is 2 weeks, and received a $4.40 hourly pay increase for that time frame, for an estimated cost of $965. So this report is a snapshot of the 3 months of the fiscal year so far. And during that time, 84 temporary merit increases have been provided, adjusting pay by an average of $3.18 per hour, for an average of just over 10 pay periods and a total cost of $245,000.
Committee members, any questions on this section of the presentation about temporary merit? Senator Blaylock.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Lippitt, just to clarify, so this wouldn't be like consultants. This is somebody that is a full-time employee at the department, and they are getting paid on top of their normal wage to complete some task that is outside of their job description. Is that correct?
Ms. Lippitt?
Co-Chair Ehlers and Senator Blaylock, yes, that's exactly right. This is pay to state employees for a time-limited project in excess of their typical job description.
Senator Blaylock, follow-up?
No.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Ms. Lippitt.
Mr. Co-Chair, I would be curious if, for Representative Tanner's questions about temporary merit, if the format of this report is what you're looking for, or if you still have questions on that front.
Representative Tanner?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, I guess the question is I'm trying to figure out, were they giving bonuses and a way for them to get around the bonus cap? Were they going in around and doing the short-term merit additional on top of the bonuses to get away from it, from the limitations? Because from what the director that, again, talked to me very nonchalantly about this, like it was no big deal, it looked like they were giving one person a bonus and they were hitting that max limit, and the only way around that was actually doing a short-term merit on top of that. And to me, I just wonder if there is a way for us to put some regulation on that, to where we do say this is the max, no matter which way you're doing it, whether you're doing it through short-term merit or you're doing it through a bonus aspect. But these are the limitations, because we do have limitations on bonuses, but not on. So that's what I was trying to more get at. If that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Lippitt, any response to that?
Co-chair and representative, thank you for the clarification. That does make sense to me. I do think that the way that those pay increases are described in code, there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to be stacked on top of each other, to your point.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, we have to write them all. Yeah. Okay. Yep, that would take legislative action then to make that change from as written. All right. So I think we can go on to the next portion of your presentation here.
All right. So the last time that the task force met, Mr. Bybee presented on vacant positions older than 6 months. This next report provides the position titles for those extended vacancies, which Senator Lakey had requested. So I do want to note that this report provides a refined total of 381 positions that have been vacant since January 1 of this year, which is slightly different from Mr. Bybee's initial report, and that is because our team was able to remove some group and temporary positions that had been included in agencies' original counts that were in their budget submissions. So the positions that you see highlighted in orange do not have funding attached to them. Often what that means is that a grant might have ended. And so removing those particular positions wouldn't have an effect on overall costs. And then the positions that are funded, those vacancies might exist for a number of reasons. They're often high skill, high turnover positions where a lack of qualified applicants is the primary challenge. However, it's also often the case that program changes or hiring freezes might be in place. And so in those instances where there's an organizational driver for the vacancy, the position is likely to be filled after that change is implemented or the freeze has been lifted. So I think that the next question that might be on people's minds looking at this is what do agencies do with the funding for those positions? And the answer is that does vary. Over half of the time, this funding was reverted, which means that the cash stays where it is, the spending authority lapses. Basically, it goes unused. And less frequently, agencies might transfer to a different expense class. So they might use that funding to buy new office furniture. And in some cases, they would use it for overtime or workload distribution among their existing staff. Do we have any questions on this report?
Senator Blaylock.
Chairman, Ms. Lippitt, just to clarify, so you said 50% of the time the money's reverted back, and then you said less frequently the money's used for other things. So where is that also the other 50%, or?
Ms. Lippitt, sorry, go ahead.
Co-Chair Ehlers and Senator Blaylock, let me see. So based on agencies reporting, it's not quite the full 100% with those three. Over 60% was reverted, 18% was transferred for a different use, and 12% was used for overtime or workload redistribution.
Senator Blaylock, anything additional? Okay. All right, Ms. Lippett, anything else you'd like to add here?
I have nothing left to add on this report if the task force is
okay.
ready.
We didn't get into, I think, management. Is that a separate report that we're going to get to?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing I'd like to just discuss with the task force right now. So there were 381 positions listed here. If this matches, it's similar to what Mr. Bybee presented or shared last time with 382, I think was the number I had in this spreadsheet. So really close. The total dollar figures there across all funds was about $57 million for those 382 positions, of which about $48 million was general fund appropriations. So I think that's sort of the dollar figures we're looking at for these 381 positions. If the committee is so willing, actually in a couple of weeks, Co-Chair Lakey and I are going to present to JFAC's interim committee. And these recommendations, well, a lot of them are going to have to go through JFAC that we're making as a DOGE committee. If the committee is willing, I'd entertain a motion that we recommend to JFAC, and Co-Chair Lakey and I can do this at that meeting, that these 381 positions essentially be eliminated along with the correspondent funding. Senator Summeroff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To your point, I have a question, and I'm not sure how to form it. With your patience, hang in there with me.
Okay.
Ms. Lippett, being able to see these titles is very helpful, but not being a content expert. For example, when I look at Department of Environmental Quality and a hydrogeologist is listed, I wonder how critical is that? Is that position's work and scope repeated in other jobs? And so that's why they're able to leave this position unfilled for whatever reason. We don't know if it's a recruitment issue or an agency decision. Is there any way for these positions to be categorized in terms of levels of critical contribution to the scope of work that that agency is required to do? I think that's my first question,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lippett, any comment on that?
Co-Chair Ehlers and Senator Simmelroth, I think that's a very good idea. I think that there is one question that was included on our vacant position questionnaire in agencies' budget submissions that gets close to that. And so that question is, what is the operational impact of this extended vacancy? And so one example of an answer to that would be the responsibilities are being absorbed by existing staff. Another example of an answer is, critical business functions aren't being performed, or, this program is severely understaffed, or we're not meeting our responsibilities in this particular program area. So with that in mind, I think we have sort of a start to prepare something along those lines, but if you're looking for specifically a yes or no on an agency determining whether a position is critical, I think that that's something that we would need to return to them and ask.
More information.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lippett. Yeah, Senator, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then to your point about making the recommendation for those budget or those position cuts, assuming that there might be more budget cuts coming for agencies either now or in the next year, I'm wondering if, given the lack of information we have in terms of how critical these positions are for the work of those agencies, if it's possible to hold off on that recommendation until we, first of all, have a better understanding, and secondly, those agencies might end up offering those positions to be cut depending on future budget cuts that might be coming.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe I'll address those. So, in terms of the agencies offering them up, I think that'd be great if they, performed some analysis and saw what was, what they could offer up on their own. But that would, I think, fit within the motion. And maybe I'll clarify as well. Instead of recommending individual positions as listed here, I think the recommendation would be we have a summary at the high level, right? Like by department. For example, Department of Commerce would be 8. So we would just recommend that it would be 8 positions with the corresponding appropriation, and then the department themselves could decide which one of those are critical or not, or how they're going to come up with that. We won't have to become experts on every single position and, how the operational impact and mission critical. But these were vacancies that have been on an average vacancy of the last 5 years. So in my mind, they've been functioning for the last 5 years without, for this example, without 8 FTPs. And so it seems like they've been able to figure it out for 5 years. I'm not seeing... Ms. Lippett, you've got a comment. Okay, go ahead.
Co-Chair Ehlers, just a point of clarification. So these positions have not been vacant for an average of 5 years. They have been vacant for 6 months. So I think there are other reports that often refer to like the 5-year average full-time position authorization. But these positions are those that were vacant as of January 1st, 2025.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I must be referring to another report that had a 5-year average on it. Okay. Representative Manwaring, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Co-Chair. I think some of the comments have been made. I was going to ask for some clarification that Ms. Lippett just did with regards to what the extended vacant position definition was here. But I think I'm lacking some additional detail to be able to make that recommendation to JFAC. For example, looking at the State Public Defender as one example, that's a new agency. And there's 15 positions there, but because it's a new agency and we provided them some additional funding, I think that's one example to me where we're just lacking some detail on what's going on. And so I would like to see some additional response. And that's what I think JFAC's job will be, is to dig into the weeds on some of these. So I would feel comfortable providing the report and saying the committee has identified these for JFAC's review as potential elimination, but not that. I think our recommendation should be in correspondence to what detail we have, which is a very high level amount right now, and then let JFAC dig into the weeds on these.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate that comment. Further discussion or questions for Ms. Lippett? Oh, Senator Berkey. Sorry, missed your light. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Lippett, I've got a couple things as I'm sorting through this. You talked about 12% of that money would be used to cover overtime cost. Of that 50% that isn't reverted, you were saying that about half of these vacant positions, about half of the money was, or the...
About 60%.
About 60%. Okay, so I was off by
okay,
10. So, but So when an agency is budgeting for their annual budget for their projected overtime costs, how fine of a calculation is that? Let's say back in the day when I was budgeting, I had to provide those figures, based on vacancies, obviously. And there's all those things you can't foresee that come up. So in your estimation or your opinion, out of all that work they do to budget ahead of time, and they're still spending 12% on overtime, is that for those unforeseen circumstances? I'm just looking for that, how finite that decision is when they're making that budgetary decision for how much they're going to budget for overtime. Just to get to my other question.
Ms. Lippett?
Co-Chair Ehlers and Senator Bierke, I think that if an agency has a lot of overtime positions, that is budgeted, but it's budgeted as sort of an add-on, if that makes sense, as sort of a lump sum. We also will need this for overtime pay. I'm not sure I'm connecting the dots on the question about the funding for the extended vacancies, because the extended vacancies, the way that the budget system works essentially for personnel costs is after the first payroll of the fiscal year is run, that data set is basically used to build out agencies' budget requests. And so if an agency is planning on hiring one of these positions, if they feel like they will need that funding in the current fiscal year, it will appear on that report. And so the funding will be included in the budget in that way. If the position remains vacant because they aren't able to fill it, then they might use that funding for bonuses, for overtime pay, for other positions. Does that help?
Senator?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, that helps a lot. It furthers my knowledge of kind of the intricacies of budgeting here at the state level. I guess to the chairman's question of a potential motion to be made or a report to be given to JFAC during the interim fall tour, the complexity of just maybe wiping out 381 positions. I know we've struggled with supplemental requests in the past. Do you see us making kind of a move in that direction, only opening up potential for, hey, we reverted that money back, we've taken away that position as was requested, but now we needed to hire it, so now we're asking for a supplemental to get money back for a position we just lost, if that makes sense.
Ms. Lippett?
Co-Chair Ehlers and Senator Bierke, I think you've hit on the fact that it is a delicate balance in terms of ensuring that agencies sort of have the leadership discretion that they need to be able to fill extended vacant positions that are critical to their operations versus the need of the legislature to be able to oversee and control the size of the overall budget.
Senator?
Mr. Chairman, and follow up, please, and Ms. Lippett. Yeah, we are like part of that equation. How much does HR, when you're looking at particularly these bonuses, back in my day, I couldn't do anything unless I had HR approval. We had ability to give bonuses, but it was almost not quite worth the work of going through the process. I'd rather take the guy out to dinner or something like that. There was some complexity to it, and it was heavily governed by HR and, of course, policy. Is that also the case here in the state?
Ms. Lippett?
Co-Chair Ehlers and Senator Bierke, I don't believe so. I believe it's a fairly straightforward approval process where the justification and the performance review is routed through the Division of Human Resources and DFM, and they as far as I know, can get a seal of approval. That being said, I know that from policy documents, not from experience. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll hold off.
Okay, thank you. Representative Scott.
All right, I'm going to try a motion.
Okay, motion's in order.
So I'd like to just talk about it real quick. What I'd like to do is get this document to JFAC so they can look into it. They know the agencies, they discuss and dig deep into the details. So the motion I would make is for the co-chairs to present the documents to JFAC for their review and their consideration to possibly consider removing positions or funding that they deem unnecessary.
Okay.
Kind of leaves it open-ended. It gets it in front of them. It moves it along and doesn't say they have to do anything, or we highly recommend it, but it lets them dig into, it brings this to their attention, which I think needs to happen.
Okay, can you repeat that motion a little bit more, Representative, so we make sure we know
Sure.
what it is?
Okay, so the motion is for the co-chairs to present this document and information, I guess you could put and information, to JFAC for their review, consideration, and research for the possible removal of positions or funding that they deem unnecessary.
Okay. I think I've got that down.
Second the motion.
Okay, and Representative Tanner seconds that motion. Committee, is there discussion on the motion? Senator Blaylock.
Thank you, Chairman. This is more just a clarifying, sorry, I'm just full of questions today.
Go ahead.
If we were to make this recommendation to remove all of these positions, when the legislature begins and the agencies come and present their budgets, could they then at that point make the case for the positions and we could add these back in, but at that time they could then make the case for, specifically I'm looking at like Idaho State Police and the troopers. They could then make the case for that and we could vote on it at that time. Is that correct timing, or am I?
Do you mean JFAC could vote on it at that time? Or, and then the whole legislature would then
Yes,
vote on it?
and then- yeah.
I think the process I see based on the motion from Representative Scott is we're just bringing forward for their review, and during the normal JFAC budget hearings and process, the agencies can make their case, and JFAC can make a decision. Maybe they're persuaded to leave them in. Maybe the agency offers it up themselves, as has been suggested. So that's, I think, where the real kind of nuts and bolts will get into, and then they would bring forward a written budget that the whole body would vote on at that time. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
Thank you.
And Representative Scott, is that accurate to your motion, what I described? Okay. All right. Thank you. Senator Samaroff.
I could go further if we have the votes.
Thank you, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
ahead, Senator.
And to Representative Scott's motion, I really like the idea of giving the co-chairs the time and space to provide more information and gather more information about these positions. We all know that there has to be backstories to these, and I know I'm a broken record. Our agencies experience leadership transitions and turnover, and those directly impact hiring of some of these positions. So if this motion is no recommendation from this task force, and it's providing the co-chairs with the ability to gather more information from the agencies themselves, I can be in support of that motion.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Berkey, your light's on.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just kind of working this out for myself here. Being on JFAC, we already get a report. It's like a running 5-year average of how many vacancies there are per agency. And I've sat through that enough to go, gosh, this is kind of complicated. how can we limit this? This group's at 81%. This one's at 94% as far as full hiring. And obviously, we want as many people hired as possible. We want the fewer vacant positions. I would say I don't dislike this motion. I think if I was on JFAC looking for direction, because I've sat there and looking at, well, what can we do? What are some percentages we can throw in there and say that this is where you have to be? More of a mandate, because everybody's all over the map, right? You're going to see, 110 agencies with different numbers, different percentages. I would much rather have you have to fall in within a certain criterion than to just give a blanket kind of JFAC, we want you to review this information more, when I think we've kind of already done that in the last couple of years. We've got the information. Now it's what do you want us to do with it? So I'm more or less looking for what do you want us to do with that information that we already get? What kind of percentages are too high, which ones are too low, and set maybe some curbs across all agencies. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Senator. Let me address something. I think, so we have before us this motion, and just giving the timing of when JFAC meets for their interim, which is before our next meeting, this would allow us to get something to present to JFAC. But I am looking at and entertaining ideas for what we do long term, and I think this might answer it, like a policy around, is it a threshold, right? Is it 95, 90, whatever that percentage is? And is there a mechanism that we can put in place that lasts longer than the DOGE task force? So there's some statute or guidance there to help address this ongoing. And I don't think we can get to that today. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen before we present to JFAC. But that's something certainly we'd entertain, and I'm looking at considerations and recommendations to that degree as well. So, Senator Bierke.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, so that is a good thing to do. Hey, this is something we find to be important, and we're letting JFAC know in the interim period this is something we're looking at. That kind of motion, I agree, would be worthwhile.
Okay, thank you. Representative Tanner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say, since I'm on JFAC, I know Senator Bierke is as well. This has been something that we have actually looked into, and I do think it is good for this body to come up with something, whether it is a direction that was currently given or further direction of what this body potentially thinks of putting those limitations on there. I know that JFAC has kicked this around for a while now. For at least the last few sessions that we've continually dug into and looked at this. So either way, I think it's good direction to give, whether it is this or whether we go into a little bit more detailed of what we're looking for. I know JFAC, it is something that I think is worth doing, and actually something that will come probably out of this next session, especially with what we're looking at in budget.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to put that as a agenda item for our next meeting, is a policy discussion, not necessarily in the weeds of the reports with 381 or whatever, but some policy discussion around that. Okay. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try an amendment to my motion.
All right, now you're getting into...
I know, but I think...
Can the maker of the motion amend their motion?
Probably.
Boy, I'm a little rusty here. We need...
She can withdraw and do it.
Okay, that's probably the simpler.
Oh, man.
Withdraw, and then...
Then I'll have someone make my substitute motion.
Or have someone make a substitute motion. That also would work. So I think we might be getting a substitute motion coming up here very shortly. He made this. He was the seconder of the motion, and therefore he is also not eligible to make that motion. Okay. We're going by Senate rules here, which the second of the motion also cannot.
Yep.
All right, we might be at the motion.
Looking for a text.
That's
Is that fine, Representative Tanner?
Yeah,
Do you want
just
to address
clarify something that you stated just a minute ago. You were looking at maybe adding something like this onto the agenda to do a little bit more. Okay, for the next one.
Yeah, for our November meeting,
Yeah.
have a more in-depth policy discussion
Okay.
around this. I think it's been discussed here, and Senator Berkey especially is his point. So, okay. I think that's our discussion. So I'm going to repeat the motion, make sure it's correct. The motion is that the DOGE Task Force co-chairs present this report and information to the JFAC Interim Committee for their review, consideration, and research for the possible removal of these positions or funding that they deem unnecessary. All right. Those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by nay? Motion carries. All right. Thank you, committee, for that lively discussion. Ms. Lippett, I think you had one more thing. If we're going a little long here on this, so maybe if you could just briefly address your last report item, and then we can get on to Mr. Tatro.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. So the last item that I have for you, I'll try not to spend too much time on it. This is a report that gets to a question that the co-chairs and task force have been evaluating: how top-heavy is state government? And specifically, how many managers does the state employ in relation to the size of the overall workforce? So this report identifies the executive exempt employees as a percentage of each agency's 5-year average authorization for full-time positions. So this category of executive exempt captures all state workers who manage a program or business unit, direct the work of at least 2 employees, and have the authority to hire and fire. And so it's really one way to quickly identify employees that have meaningful managerial responsibilities rather than an occasional supervisory role or some sort of office management type position. So using the Attorney General at the top, they have averaged 221 full-time positions over the last 5 years. They have 11 executive exempt employees, so that's about 5% of their employees that are management to staff.
Okay. Thank you. In interest of time, I think we're going to move on, and we can bring this back up at another meeting if we so desire or have more questions. I'm sure Ms. Lippett will be responsive to those in between. Thank you for your presentation, your work on this. Next up, Jared Tatro, also from LSO, the team lead of the Impact Review Team. We have a packet before us that he's prepared with his slides on agency consolidation and reorganization. So he's going to walk us through those right now. So if you could introduce yourself for the record and then make your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the task force. Jared Tatro with the Impact Review Team with Legislative Services Office. And as the good chair mentioned, today I'll be talking to you about the process to date when it comes to agency consolidation, repeal, and then reorganization. My presentation will cover 4 main components. One, just a very quick recap of what Chairman Ehlers presented to you at the last DOGE meeting. The research process currently being done by the Impact team when it comes to consolidation or repeal, the updates on what was identified as low-hanging fruit, and then the next steps for this task force and LSO staff. Quick reminder, which it's hard to believe it's been almost a month since the last DOGE task force meeting. Chairman Ehlers presented several layers of agencies that could be looked at for agency consolidation, agency repeal, changes, merging, and identified some low-hanging fruit, and for lack of a better term, middle-hanging fruit, and some kind of high-hanging fruit that we can get to when time and we're really interested in something else to do. LSO and the Impact team were tasked just a couple weeks ago with looking at 13 of those 14 low-hanging fruit options, and then again, those other 60-ish agencies based on committee requests and as time and resources allow. The 14 low-hanging fruit options are shown on the screen. I have renumbered them from what Chairman Ehlers presented only to make this next presentation just a little bit simpler. And to date, the Impact team has looked at 1 through 6. We are working hard on 7 and 8, and we feel that the governor's office and staff it would be beneficial if they provided what they envision when it comes to 9 through 12. And then 13, we are looking at, but having a hard time finding why it's no longer necessary versus is it just no longer want to do. And then number 14 was removed. So a little bit more detail in just a second. So what have we done? What are we doing when it comes to this? What is our research? And I want to at this time thank Representative Scott and Co-Chair Ehlers for their help. We've been using the Good Representatives document as our starting point for our research, as well as feedback from the chairman to make sure we're addressing what the committee's needs are. So thank you both. In the information, we're going to look at the mission. What is the mission statement? What is the purpose? Either identified on the website and or through statute. What is the history? When did it come to be? Why did it come to be? And other just a kind of overview of what that agency does. What is the legal authority? Is it in the Constitution specifically? Is it implied? Statutes, rules? What are the federal requirements? What are the fiscal and staffing information? Right? We rely on a lot of the budget documents. There's some great publications up there. Appropriations, fund balance, assets, liabilities, oversight documents, the performance reviews that every agency submits each year, any financial audits done either independently or through Legislative Services Audits Division. Are there any OPE reports that have been conducted in the past 20 years? And then what other information is out there? And one of the big ones is agency input. They are the experts, they know their agencies, and so feedback from them of what they do, how they do it, is critical to understand. What does Idaho code say? How is that interpreted? Is it correct? Do conversations need to take place? Are there court case or lawsuits? Are there any annual or other reports? We know that agencies are required to submit well over 400 reports to the legislature each year. Do those reports have information that could benefit in any consolidation or repeal? And then do other states, how do they tackle? How do they handle these agencies? How do they handle the statutory reassignments? And then finally, is there and how does it relate to the Idaho Code Cleanup Act? Mr. Penny mentioned this when it came to the Columbia River Compact. It was submitted to be repealed, but it was also presented as a potential repeal option in Chairman Ehlers' presentation just last week. So we're trying to look at all of these as well as agencies submitted bills to make sure that the full conversation can take place and that you as legislators and your peers have the information that you need to make the informed decisions. So just a quick update on the low-hanging fruit options. The One Plan Executive Group, this was submitted through the Idaho Code Cleanup Act and was actually approved by this committee to go on to bill drafting at the last DOGE Task Force meeting. Number 2, with the Big Payette Lake Water Quality Council, the research is done. We're just waiting on a response from the current nonprofit that is taking over the Big Payette Lake Water Quality Council. The statutory requirements have been done. Legislation was needed. That legislation is passed. It sits on the books and is ready for repeal. We reached out to make sure that while the report was done, the work that legislation intended to be done, is it still there? Does the Payette Lake, which is the water source for the city of McCall, is it still staying clean? And so we should be able to have that submitted to this committee through the code cleanup by the next meeting. Number 3, the task force just approved to send the Columbia Compact Commission. That section of code has been met, and that was just submitted on and approved by you guys just a little bit ago. Number 4, eliminate the Junior College District Dormitory Housing Commission. In our research, we uncovered that there's a $7.5 million bond that is tied to this. And so rather than submit it to this task force, we want to find out what happens to that bond if this section is repealed, if anything. And so that's the work we're currently conducted. That's the knowledge that I have. So Mr. Hartwig has some more information if you want to dive a little deeper, but North Idaho College has been great at getting us that information. Number 5 and number 6, this is where we start to get into mergers. And I sent you 2 emails due to the file size. And those files provide everything I talked about on the prior slide. Copies of OPE reports, copies of statute, copies of mission statements. That's all in those. And we've conducted the work, but we need guidance. And that's what the latter half of my presentation will get to, is what would you like us to do with all that information? when it comes to bingo raffle specifically is they also submitted repeal of sections through the Idaho Code Cleanup Act. So we'll need guidance on, do you want to go that route or would you like to take a different route? And I'll get to that in just a second. Regarding the Sheep and Goat Health Board and merging that with the Department of Agriculture, we have not started that research yet. The Idaho Honey Commission, they're in statute. Google says there's a website, but nothing seems to load. And because the Department of Agriculture is currently working on some quagga mussel issues, we're kind of letting them focus on a more pressing issue than determining the Honey Commission status at this time, but it's on our radar. As I mentioned earlier, the governor's recommending the elimination of the state brand board and moving the brand inspector into the Department of Agriculture. We feel that it would be best to have the governor's staff address that proposal with some additional information of what's envisioned with that. For those that are in the ranching industry, the brand board serves as a kind of a vital role, and I'll get to some questions here in a minute that address why we've come to that conclusion. Number 11, soil and water into the Department of Water Resources. Again, we feel the governor's office would be best to provide why they recommended that. With number 12, again, governor's office, but also this would require codifying the Office of Energy and Mineral Resources. You may recall when I presented back in August, that office is established through executive order. It is mentioned in Idaho Code, but its full establishment and the rules that it follow come under that executive order, which is re-upped every 4 years. Number 13, the regional committees for early intervention services. This is with health and welfare. We have gone through that process through the Code Cleanup Act, but we have a lot of questions and we just need to continue doing research on, is it still needed or is it just something that can move on from now? And then finally, drug policy and health and welfare. That was not looked at based on recommendations of the task force members at the last meeting. Unless there are any questions on these 14, I'm happy to move on.
Mr. Tatro, I just want to address something here, just probably for the benefit of the task force members. What we're doing today is kind of the high-level overview. I think the plan for the next meeting is on these low-hanging fruit. So some of them we've kind of already acted on through code cleanup, but the others at our next meeting, we'd like to go in depth on those and take a position, a recommendation on it at our next meeting. And ideally, we'll have all the information before us, and we'll invite, for example, the brand board merging a Department of Agriculture, or the brand inspector. We'll invite the Department of Agriculture here and the brand inspector here, or their deputies, to hear from them to answer our questions. In the meanwhile, if you look at your email, Mr. Tatro prepared a report on one of them already, the bingo and raffle board. If you look at that, it follows what Representative Scott put together as a framework quite well. The legal authority in the Constitution, the statutes, it gives us their mission statement. It gives us any rules that may have been, or references to rules that were promulgated. It gives us budget information. So we can kind of get a sense of the scope and the mission of the agency and what they're doing. And so hopefully for the ones that we put on the agenda for November, we'll have that information before us so we can make a very informed decision. We'll have before us the directors or their representatives to answer questions for us. And so that's the idea. So today we're kind of going through an overview of the process. So you don't necessarily need to ask all your questions specifically about each of these ones listed here. But the hope is we'll get that information for next time and then be able to have a discussion around each of those. So with that clarity, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to request from Mr. Tetro to add one more low-hanging fruit to your list, and I think it'll be very simple. It's 67, 7801, 02, and 03, the Pacific Northwest Economic Region.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative. And then we'll get to that. Well, why don't you carry on with the rest of your presentation, then we'll talk about identifying some others outside of this low-hanging fruit list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the last part of my presentation kind of looks at, moving forward. And much like how I mentioned, it would be beneficial if the governor's office provided some information on what they were envisioning with those consolidations. Same would be true for any legislative proposals as well. And some of the high-level questions, and that's how my next 3 slides are, is the high level, a little bit more detailed, and then really an ask of this task force for guidance. But one of the biggest questions in any of this is, what is the goal of consolidation? Or is the goal just to reduce costs in FTP? Is it to increase efficiency? Is it to provide better services for constituents? Is it to remove unnecessary redundancies? Right? Some agencies you can consolidate, and there's probably a lot of work you can reduce, and there's some that you could probably provide better services, and there's some that might be proposed for mergers that don't make a lot of sense. What is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? And that can help the impact team and LSO determine how to best do the research. Who's going to be consolidated? Does agency X go to agency Y or vice versa? It seems small, but when you talk about bill drafting, when you talk about current leases and current contracts that might have to be rewritten, if you're going to form a new agency, if you're going to create a new title, all these documents have to kind of be thought through and in what order. And so on top of letting employees know what the next steps might be, when would it take place? How fast does this have to occur? Is the goal to put an emergency clause in legislation? Is it to be done next year or just sometime in the near future? How can affected agencies manage the resources to meet the new requirements? You know, what will they need? Do they have what they need? How do we identify those necessary resources? What staff training can be provided? What one-time funding might JFAC want to consider to ensure transitions take place on top of one-time funding to move folks between the offices? As well as what options does the legislature want to provide agencies, either through the budget or law, when it comes to addressing uncertainties, things that just weren't thought of at the time or that don't quite work as intended? And then ultimately, which options does the task force or the legislature in general want LSO to focus on first? Do we look at some of these repeals that are like the Columbia Compact that have kind of passed their time? Or would you like us to focus more energy when it comes to certain consolidations? So when we get into this, and based on some of the research that we provided in those emails, you know, these are some questions that they're specific to looking at bingo and lottery, STEM and the Workforce Council, as well as the brand board, brand inspector. But the concepts of these questions can really be applied to just about any of the consolidation efforts. Do the lottery commissioners have adequate knowledge and resources to advise on charitable gaming? We know that the staff do, but if the lottery commissioners are going to take over that advisory role, is that something they can do pretty quickly? Currently, the Bingo Raffle Advisory Board, even though they haven't met since 23, their role is to make recommendations to the lottery commissioners on how to improve charitable gaming in Idaho. Can the lottery commissioners and the staff continue to absorb that? Probably a pretty simple question, but still, that's going to be a concept that can take place in any merger. Are the resources and the knowledge going to be there? The legislature and this task force have looked a lot at regulations. Do bingo raffles, do they need to continue to be regulated at the same level? Does the legislature want to revisit and consider if it's either over-regulated or under-regulated, right? Based on the answer to that question could determine if the impact team submits through the Code Cleanup Act as submitted by the agency or holds those back so the legislature can determine if additional regulations need to be reviewed.
Mr. Tatro, I'm going to jump in here and appreciate you providing these examples. Rather than get in the weeds of each one of these, I appreciate you providing these samples of what we want to think about. Why don't we go on to the next steps of moving forward? Because I don't want to get into a discussion of answering these questions, because these are some questions that certainly need answered. But I don't think we'll spend our time right now on those.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So that leads me to my last slide. And moving forward, really we're asking is the DOGE task force members to answer the questions on slide 8, the who, what, when, where, why, prioritize the agencies and identify what the goal will be for that review. And really, I mean, this can be done through an anonymous survey. This could be done through emails. This could be done as the chair and the committee sees fit. But really, we need the impact or the input from you all to determine how best to make this process work for this upcoming session, if that is the goal of the task force and of the legislature. And with that, I conclude my remarks. Thank you.
And let me just add to that task force that To that end, I think the co-chairs are in the very near future going to be soliciting your feedback on priorities. So we do have, we have the low-hanging fruit that we're going in depth, and certainly next meeting we'll probably have some deep reports that you're getting already, but for the ones we'll consider. And then there's like another 60 that were on that list. Rather than task LSO with doing the deep dive research for all 60, let's see if we can move 10 more forward of that 60 for the next round. And then we can come back and, we'll have 50 left and decide, what ones we want to move forward. So task force in the near future, just look for the co-chairs to be soliciting your feedback so we can sort of narrow down the next, say top 10 for LSO to research for us and come up with what we want to do. So, all right. Any additional questions or comments for Mr. Tatro? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for that presentation. And I know this is a lot of work that goes into these reports, so thank you to you and your team. Next up, if we could have the secretary get the sign-in. We have public comments on board, and let me take a look at that and just see how many we have signed up for comment. Okay, so right now we have one person signed up to testify, so I'll be a little more lenient, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll see if anybody else wants to testify. Representative Sauter, you have signed up for public testimony, so if you could come introduce yourself for the record, and then you'll have a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Sauter, District 1, Sandpoint. I may be here a little prematurely, but I've heard that the Lakes Commission from Bonner County could be on the soon or is on the low-hanging fruit list. So since I was here, I'm 420 miles from home, I thought I would come in and visit with you guys for just a minute. The state of Idaho has a water right for the Lake Pend Oreille Basin, so our governor has that right. This is really what it's all about. The Lake Pend Oreille and its basin provide a huge economic impact on our community, Bonner County, Boundary County, even some of Kootenai County, whether it's flood control, generating electricity, storing water, you name it. The lake is a dominant factor for our community. The history of it is the federal government came to Idaho and said, we'd like to build a dam on the Pend Oreille Lake, add 11 feet of water to it for flood control across the Northwest. The state of Idaho said, great. We made a deal with them. We trusted the federal government, and we've had our share of issues ever since. So that's really what the Lakes Commission is all about. Being 420 miles away, it's tough for the governor's staff to be there at all times. The Lakes Commission is not an idle commission, such that some of the others that have been mentioned. The Lakes Commission meets quarterly at least, and has so since 2003. So that has quite a history. It was formed here with a senator and our representative from our district that asked for that, and it started out as an issue with Army Corps of Engineers, federal fish and game, federal endangered species, you name it. So it was just to push back against federal overreach, and we've been fighting ever since. So right now they have 5 governor-appointed people on board. They deal with lake operations, power generation, capital improvement projects, and really they serve as the Idaho voice for water rights for our area and for our state. So my ask, and I'll just give you a quick current issue. As many of you know, all of our electeds here voted unanimously to support Senate Joint Memorial 105. Senator Woodward and I carried that to push back on the federal government and say we need to deal with our lake situation now and get our federal electeds to appreciate and understand our issue. We're also dealing with water adjudication for the Pend Oreille Basin, so that's a timely issue that's going on within the next year. So those are all huge issues for our area and the state itself. So in summary, what I ask is that we strongly consider removing our Lakes Commission from any of the low-hanging fruit list, whether it's from, maybe it's from 10 all the way down to 60, but it's an active group. It means a hell of a lot to us and our district and our state, and it's the voice of our state government as well. So that, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Representative Sauter, for that. Committee, any questions for Representative Sauter? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else willing or wishing to testify? I'm not seeing anyone today. Okay. All right. Well, we'll close public testimony then. Appreciate the good work of LSO and our staff in doing this. And to the committee members, just kind of in closing again, we're going to solicit your feedback here real soon to try to look at the next level, next steps for which ones to look at or not to look at, as the case may be. We do have scheduled, and let's just clear it right now, a next meeting for November 19th in the afternoon at 2 p.m. It's a Wednesday. Unless anybody knows immediately why that wouldn't work. It doesn't conflict with any other interim committees, thankfully. It's not Thanksgiving that week yet. So that is what we're planning on meeting next time. So, and again, as we discussed, we'll probably go more in depth on this low-hanging fruit list. So also be looking for your emails for some of that research that LSO is going to provide around the framework that we've, Representative Scott helped put forward. So task force members, thank you for your work and your time today, and we are adjourned.